If you guys have neglected your draft prep up until this point and you want to make sure you don't draft an absolute bust this year in fantasy hockey, this is the video for you. We are going to be going over the worst pick in every single round, rounds 1 through 12, along with an honorable mention alongside that. Now, these actually might not be bad picks, but they are by far the worst picks within that range of ADP. You'll see what I mean. Let's get right into the video. I think it's really hard to go wrong in the first round, especially, but if there's one player that I just don't think should be a first round player this year, it's Artemi Panarin. I know he's coming off of an absolute massive season where he scored close to 50 goals, had 120 points, and set a career high in shots by over 100. But I need more. I need to be able to see it again, especially after getting burned by guys like Tim Stützle and Tage Thompson last year, who had exceptional years but weren't able to repeat it back to back. I'm a little bit hesitant about Panarin. He's typically not a high volume shooter and has shown this over the course of his career, and he typically doesn't even get close to those goal totals even remotely. As you can see, our projection for him here is around 35 goals, which I think is where he's going to sit next season. Could I see him hit 40 if he decides to shoot the puck more? Sure. But for him to get over 300 shots and close to 50 goals again, I'm not sure. Along with the fact that his peripherals aren't great, he is one of the better power play players in the National Hockey League. But out of everybody in the first round, I think I'm avoiding Artemi Panarin. Honorable mention, JT Miller. Again, it's possible we see a bit of a dip in his production as well. He has historically been around the 100-point mark with great peripherals, and I think those peripherals will continue, but I'm just not sure he's going to be able to produce another 100-plus point season going into next year. There's better options available, I think, for round 1. Round 2, ADP 13 to 24, are the dynamic duo of Sam Reinhart and Zach Hyman. The regression over both of these two players should be really high going into next season. Both had crazy high shooting percentages, especially Reinhart, who also found half of his points on the power play. So again, very dependent on that. I just don't think that I'm taking a chance on either of these guys in round 2. I think there's much better options if you go back and look at my best pick available in each round. There's so many elite forwards, elite defensemen available in this round still. I just don't have the confidence that Reinhardt's going to be a 50-goal scorer again, and I don't have the confidence that Zach Hyman has a 50-goal season in him again. I get Hyman's playing with McDavid and will continue to get high goal totals, but again, you're picking a guy based off of his floor, and he doesn't really have a high point total on top of that. Reinhart is a little bit better, but again, the shot volume's not really there. Had a crazy high shooting percentage last season, and I think I expect Reinhart to be more in that 40-40 range. Still a good option, but not somebody that I'm looking to get in round 2. As you heard by now, Jeremy Swayman is still not signed and should be going nowhere near his ADP. He's going to start free falling in drafts. If you guys haven't seen already in our mock drafts, definitely go check that out. But again, you don't want to draft a goalie with your third pick a lot of the time to where he might not even play a single game for the first half of the season. There is no update right now in terms of contract negotiations. He still remains unsigned. I think there's a big risk with him going into the season that he could potentially hold out for long, like even he could genuinely hold out till December 1st. I think that is a legitimate option for Swayman. It's not going to benefit the Bruins by any means. It's not going to benefit Swayman as much either, but this guy wants to get paid, and the Bruins are not willing to do it as of right now. So again, a little bit of a risk there. And then Adam Fox for round 3. I think there's better defensemen available in this range. Fox is great. He's consistent. He's a 70-point defenseman, but outside of that, doesn't really shoot the puck. Had a crazy high goal total compared to his career average the year before, along with an inflated shooting percentage that I don't think he will get back to next season. But again, a 70-point player with not great peripherals, unless you count blocks. But even then, it's still like 130-ish blocks on a consistent regular basis. I think there's better D available with better peripherals. I'm just not looking to grab Fox in the 3rd round. Round 4, again, really good options, but Stuart Skinner this early for me is just not it. I think there's better options available in this round specifically. You've seen Vasilevsky even fall into this range as well. But for Stuart Skinner, he's going to get a lot of wins. He's going to get a lot of starts, but there's something that I don't like about how he's just so incredibly inconsistent from a game-to-game basis. There's times where he lets in 4 to 6 goals and Edmonton just ends up winning the game. There's times where he lets in 2 goals and he shuts it down for the entire rest of the game. The inconsistency in terms of his save percentage and goals against is really what I don't like about him, especially in round 4. I'd much rather get a safer goaltender in terms of save percentage and goals against, but Skinner will win a lot of games this season and will start a lot this season. And then honorable mention, Jack Eichel. Again, I just need to see a full season out of him. He's coming off of the surgery. He's been around a point a game. Again, there's really good options in this range. I don't think Eichel's a bad pick by any means, but I'm just trying to avoid him and go with better options in round 4. Somebody that's a little bit safer, somebody that I know has played historically over 75 plus games and doesn't have a massive injury history. Very similar to Jeremy Swayman, Thatcher Demko is a huge risk, and it's not because of the fact that he's not going to play games. It's just we don't know when he's going to play games. He's dealing with a continued injury that will basically just be with him for the rest of his playing career, is my understanding of the injury. There really isn't any update as to how it's going to affect him on a day-to-day basis. I've seen clips of him look great. I've seen clips of him look absolutely defeated in preseason so far. I don't know how to gauge this guy. I'm concerned that he's going to be out for a long time. I don't know if he's going to start anytime soon to begin with. It's really dependent on him, my understanding, in terms of when he thinks he's ready to get back into action. And then Alexander Georgiev, similar situation to Stuart Skinner, but I think it's a little bit more risky with him. Just given his save percentage and his goals against average, he is just not a good goalie, I'd say, in those two categories. But again, should start a half decent amount, even though I do think Justus Annunen will cut into that volume this year. But Georgiev will win a bunch. It's just the save percentage and the goals against that could burn you going forward. Ryan Marchand's coming off of a triple surgery. Three. He's had 3 surgeries in the offseason. He was on my must-avoid players list. I still don't want anything to do with this guy. Is it possible that the injuries actually benefited him? Sure, but he's not fully ready to play hockey yet. He hasn't been in a full contact jersey in preseason. He continues to skate. There are rumors that he will be ready for game 1, but again, I'm just a little hesitant due to his age, due to the fact that we've seen a steady decline in his production over the last couple of years, and given the fact that he's had 3 surgeries in the offseason. It's just not somebody that I'm looking to draft in round 6 again when there's a lot of talented players available, a lot of good defensemen in this range, a lot of good forwards in this range. Again, based off his ADP, I'm staying away from him. There's a lot of risk there. And then Brock Boeser, I need to see another season. The 40-goal year, he finally did it. He's talented enough to repeat that. It's just he doesn't have a great shot volume, and he doesn't really have a high point total on top of that. So if he doesn't end up scoring goals, he's going to be a run-of-the-mill 55, 60-point player. And taking a chance on the guy in round 6 is just not something that I'm willing to do personally. Round 7, we have Brandon Montour of the Seattle Kraken, newly signed to the Seattle Kraken. I get it. He had a monster season that one year in Florida, but we know Florida is an absolute anomaly when it comes to producing high-quality fantasy hockey assets due to their style of play and the fact that they just score at a really high rate. Montour has since not even been close the prior season, where he had 33 points in under 70 games. So he wasn't close to the pace that he was that one year in Florida when he was the true power play 1 defenseman. He now goes over to Seattle. And on top of that, it's just like, it's injury concern again with Montour. I don't know who the power play 1 defenseman is. If I'm taking a shot on a Seattle defenseman this year, it's going to be Vince Dunn. He's been the power play quarterback there for a long time. It's possible they bring Montour in. It's possible they run both of them on that top power play. I don't know. We don't know yet. We've seen rumors in camp, but again, camp, they like to experiment with stuff, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the case come season open. I'm just staying away from Montour. There's better defensemen available and defensemen that I would much rather take, especially in this range. And then Brian Nugent-Hopkins, I think he's a solid pick, actually. I don't think I want to get to him in this range. I think anywhere beyond his ADP, he's good value. Again, really low shot total. Doesn't really score a lot. He will be playing with McDavid probably the entire season. So again, there's a lot of upside there. And then the peripherals are kind of meh. Like he had like around 60-ish hits last season. But again, not somebody that I'm actively looking to draft in this range. Again, lots of good options here if you go look at my best picks in every round video. But Nuge is actually like a solid pick. I don't have anything against him. I just don't like him at his ADP here. Jonathan Marchessault, I talked about Forsberg in the must-avoid elite players video. I think out of Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, the one right-handed high-volume 40 goal scorer that's going to see a decline in production is Marchessault. So again, I think he'll see a drop in his goal totals as well as his shot volume, but he does continue to hit at a pretty decent rate. I just don't know, especially given his age, how he's going to produce in a brand new environment in Nashville. We'll see what kind of minutes he gets. We'll see what kind of power play opportunity he gets. They might end up splitting them. I don't know. Devon Toews is also a pretty consistent defenseman. He gets around basically 50 points every single year, which is really good in terms of defenseman and production. The one downside to him is he doesn't really have a crazy high peripheral in any circumstance. His shot volume is pretty good. His block totals is pretty good. His hit volume is okay. It doesn't really stand out in any category. I think he's a solid like D3, D4 option, especially in round 8. You can't really go wrong with that. But given the other options in this round, I just wasn't too excited about Devon Toews. You've got a guy like Gustav Forsling in this round who could jump and be that power play one defenseman in Florida. Mike talked about him in his must draft defenseman video. So again, just nothing really to get excited about. He's a safe pick here. Not a lot of upside, but again, not a bad pick, but not something to get excited about. Mattias Ekholm, I don't understand why people continue to draft this guy. He doesn't really have a ton of upside. I know he was over 40 points in Edmonton last season. He's got a decent hit volume and block volume. He's around like the 100, 105, 110 mark consistently. He's going to play a ton of minutes. Doesn't get any power play time, really. I think he's power play 2. I think him and Nurse kind of split duties there. I don't exactly know what the power play 2 situation is for Edmonton going into next season, but I know that I don't want anything to do with Ekholm simply because he doesn't really offer much upside. And I don't think he's going to be a quality option going into next season. I think he'll be your run-of-the-mill 40-point defenseman, and that's not somebody I want to draft later when there's a ton of upside players available. I actually really like Lucas Raymond as the honorable mention. He's solid. I don't think he's scoring 30 goals again next season, but I do think that he's talented enough to be around the 65, 70-point mark. You should see his shot volume continue to be the same. That's the other thing that really is a downside to Raymond is he doesn't have a crazy high shot volume or peripheral total. So again, I understand why he's in round 9, but I think there are better options available here for forwards, and Raymond was just somebody that stood out to me as, you know, if we see his goal total come down, is he just like a 60-point guy, 65-point guy? But who knows? He's young enough and he could honestly continue to produce at the rate that he was last season, but I just would need to see another season out of him. Aaron Ekblad is notorious for not being healthy under any circumstance, so I typically try to avoid him in most drafts. I do think there is a little bit of upside this season if he does end on power play 1. Again, we don't actually know yet who's going to be quarterbacking that top power play for Florida, but Ekblad has the most risk out of the defensemen available. He just never seems to stay healthy. He doesn't have an outstanding peripheral total by any means. His shot volume is pretty decent given his, you know, the fact that he only plays 60 games a year. But again, I'm just looking at other defensemen in this range. True power play 1 defensemen are still available here that you can get. And then Brent Burns, again, is pretty much a floor pick. Like, he's going to get around 40 points. He's going to lose his power play 1 job to Shane Gostisbehere this season. So I argued putting him above Ekblad, but Ekblad's just so risky on a year-to-year basis. I just don't ever try to draft that guy. And Burns, again, should see a dip in his production and his shot volume due to the fact that he won't be the power play 1D in Carolina going forward. Similar situation, Filip Hronek is just, again, like a 40-point defenseman. I know that's pretty good. Like anywhere around 45, 50 points is solid. Very similar to a guy like Devon Toews, who's attached himself to an elite defenseman in Quinn Hughes. Doesn't have a crazy high hit or block total by any means. They're pretty decent, and his shot volume isn't great as well. So again, your typical run-of-the-mill 45, 50-point defenseman maybe. But the biggest red flag for me for Hronek was the fact that he only had 8 points in his last 32 games after having an absolutely elite first half of the season. He looks like a league winner, and then all of a sudden he just completely died off. So that worries me. I think there is some boom or bust potential with him. If he does get back on that pace of last season, he will be a league winner, and I will gladly eat my words on this. But there's just no proof to me that that's going to continue, and I'm just not looking to draft him when, again, there are power play 1 defensemen available at this range that you can get that should have really strong seasons. And then Jeremy Lauzon, if you're in a bangers league, this guy goes well before round 11. He led the league in hits last season. He's got a good block total on top of that and a pretty decent shot total. He just doesn't really have any point production out of him, and I think in round 11 you can still find a lot of players that have really good point upside and really high ceilings in this range, or at least players that could potentially have high ceilings in this range. And to me, Lauzon should be like a D5 pick for you if you're snagging up a defenseman, if you count hits in your league. He could be solid, a floor option for you guys going forward, especially in deeper leagues. But in round 11, I think there's still a lot better picks available. And then finally, Blake Coleman of the Calgary Flames. he had a good year last year. No complaints on my end. He had 30 goals. He had 54 points, 191 shots, 128 hits. Solid, to say the very least, out of Blake Coleman. But again, the shooting percentage increased by like 7, 8, 6%, 7%. It wasn't great. I can't imagine he scores 30 goals again next season, especially after never doing it ever in his career. And his highest goal total prior to this was 22. So I think he could get back in that 22, 23, even 25 range, potentially, given his ice time and deployment. He's got a decent shot volume. He's usually around 200 shots every single season, but the shot and hit combo is really why you draft this guy. It's not because the point upside. It's not because the power play point totals. So for me, I think with Coleman, it's just more of a floor play. It doesn't have a lot of upside. And then for Peter Mrazek, just don't ever draft a Chicago goalie. They're going to be bad this year. They're going to get lit up. But I don't see a reason to doing it unless you just strictly count saves in your league. Even if you count wins and saves, I'm still not drafting this guy. That is going to do for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like down below as to, is there anybody on this list that you disagree with? I always love hearing your guys' thoughts, especially, you know, there were tough picks in some of these rounds. Like, there were some good players throughout rounds that I still really enjoy as players, and I don't think are horrible picks. But based off their ADP, I think these are pretty much the consensus worst picks in every single round. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know, and leave a like if you enjoyed this content. I will see you in the next video. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.